So welcome once again to our more romantic setting with, with an epitome of beauty and romance, Deepti Naval. We're so happy she's here in Shekhawati with us, enjoying our ambience and as we are enjoying hers. She recently wrote a beautiful book which is very personal. It's about her own experiences and it's called A Country Called Childhood. A beautiful metaphor for growing years, to give it a body, to call it a country. I happened to go for a book reading, I think it was sometime in July or August. July in Gurgaon, in a place called Koram, and it was so fascinating, the excerpts from the book that she read, and then the Q&A that happened after that I was really moved and contacted her the same evening and told her about Shekhawati, and she was equally excited about coming to Shekhawati, and so that struck a chord between us, and finally she's here on the occasion of VHAH FEST 2023, and we are delighted that she's part of the festival. She's not only come for a book reading, but she's come for the entire time of the festival, and that's been wonderful. So without further delay, just to link, this whole event of her book reading with the festival, she was, her young days were in a Haveli like this. So there's a connect between her childhood and this ambience, and it has repeatedly over the last few days she feels that connect with history and bringing that feeling into her life in the future somehow. And let us see how her post-independence childhood has shaped her being and her life, as we will witness through her book reading today. And without saying too much, I hand over the mic to Deepti ji to speak more about her book and to read from her book. And after that, we will open the floor to some interaction and questions, which she would be happy to answer.
Thank you, Shruti. Thank you all for being here. It's wonderful. I'm just like in a dream-like state, last 2 days. I think it's just, I'd heard so much about this place. This is the first time I grabbed the opportunity when Shruti said, will you come for the festival? And I said, yes, I'm coming. It's just so wonderful to be here. And also being able to see the work of other artists and witness, this whole creative ambience in this kind of an environment. It's amazing, actually, Shruti. It's really incredible. So I needed to, this is not, because these copies have just come, I'm very disorganized in this trip. Somehow मेरा चश्मा भी नहीं है यहाँ, मैं किसी का चश्मा पहन रही हूँ, किताब भी अभी आई है. So pages are not marked, but I will try and let me tell you a little bit about the book. Normally people expect you to write autobiography of a film celebrity, कि अपनी जर्नी होगी, कब स्टार्ट किया, कहाँ से, कैसे पहली फिल्म, ब्रेक कैसे मिला, and all that stuff. But somehow I thought, because it is my 4th book, I have 3 books published already. The first one was called Lamha Lamha. 1981 में वो publish हुई थी poetry, हिंदुस्तानी में. और उसके बाद काफ़ी gap रहा. I was writing, but somehow the concentration was on movies. So second book came out. It's another collection of poems I started writing back in English again. That came out in, it's called Black Wind and Other Poems. And the third book is a collection of short stories called The Mad Tibetan, Stories from Then and Now. Now when I was in college in New York, I thought हम तो अपनी okay.
क्या हुआ? Sound ही चला गया.
Sound मिलेगा. हाँ.
आ गया.
Yeah, in college in New York, I thought we have. I made an effort to write in Hindustani because उस ज़माने में उस वक्त बहुत शौक था शायरी का, reading fairs, reading Ghalib, and then of course the lyricists like Sahir Ludhianvi and Shailendra and all. I loved the words these people created, and I was very fascinated with language at that time, you know. और अमेरिका में रह के आपको लगता है कि यहाँ तो सभी अंग्रेज़ी बोलते हैं, तो हम तो अपनी ज़बान में लिखेंगे. तो उस वक्त मैंने फिर लिखना शुरू किया, and I would look for nice Urdu words, and that's how Lamha Lamha happened. But then after I came back to Bombay, to India, I joined films. तो ये थोड़ा सा जो मेरा वो हमारी अपनी ज़बान वाला जो सिचुएशन थी वो थोड़ी alter हो गई. I went to the comfort of writing in English, and I think since stayed with it, you know. It kind of felt somehow easier कि पहले जैसे thought आए उसको वैसे ही लिख दिया जाए, doesn't matter. क्योंकि उर्दू के लफ्ज़ जो हैं वो ढूंढना और अच्छी लफ्ज़ यूज़ करना, it may take me away from saying what I really intend to say. And also Black Wind came at a time when I wanted to talk about the harsher realities of life, you know. Lama Lama was more romantic phase when you're looking up ahead at life, and you know, so that वो phase अलग था. Then when I wanted to write a little bit about the darker side, then I had to switch back, and since then I have just somehow never gone back to. I would love to someday write in Hindustani again, but this book started 20 years ago. The first 4 chapters were written in 20 years ago. Okay, I knew that I wanted to write about my childhood because I thought as a writer, I mean, I can sit and narrate my life to somebody and they can just pen it down and pull out a book which says Autobiography of Deepti Naval. But that was not going to be my work as a writer. So I thought, what should it be? I wanted to recreate my childhood for the reader. I thought, let me take the reader through those corridors of memory so that I can bring alive for them what I have lived, the way I remember it, to somehow recreate that whole ambience. Those years, I will read a little bit from the beginning, and so you get a feel of the book. Because marking ज़्यादा नहीं है तो हम लोग बातें ज़्यादा गुफ्तगू ज़्यादा करेंगे और मैं थोड़ा सा पढ़ूँगी. लेकिन to give you an idea, let me read a little bit.
Should I put it on a stand? The mic?
नहीं, it's okay. So I'll just read this thing that I wrote. When I started to write about my childhood, I thought of it as not just a regular book where I tell people about all that I have lived. Rather, I wanted to recreate my childhood for the reader. I wanted to take you through those corridors of memory, setting up things the way I remember them. In that sense, it is not a typical memoir. It is more like a novel. This book could simply be titled Stories from My Childhood, and it would be apt because I feel life is all about stories. That I am the sum total of all the stories that impacted me since I was a little girl, stories from my early days. It is stories that fill me up with life, make me what I am, stories that make me look at life the way I do, stories that make my world come alive. If it were not for the stories that came down to me from my mother, my father, and from all the people around at the time when I was growing up, then who would I be? What would I be without the stories that crept into my heart, found a nestling place, and stayed in there forever? Stories. I don't nurture them, they nurture me. I'm going to read a bit. The first, it's the prologue of the book. It's my very early memory. Now, little bit about the house where in which I lived. I was born in Amritsar. I lived within the walled city. It was a huge looming 4-storied structure in the middle of the, you can say the chaos of the walled cities jo hote hain, but because it was on the outer side, the outermost side of the walled city, so it was a little quieter street. It had a few shops. It had the house had it was adjacent to a mosque, right next to a mosque. And between the mosque and the house there was this gully, which my grandfather had opened up the area to the back of the house when the refugees, the cobblers from Pakistan, they came. राजस्थान से आए थे पाकिस्तान साइड से, तो उनको पीछे उस एरिया में उनको बसा लिया. So there was a tabela right across from my main gate. तो ये पीछे मोचियों का पूरा मोहल्ला था, ये तबेला था, सामने सड़क पे कुछ दुकानें थीं और that is the ambience. I'm going to just read the first part. It's called Dance of the Songs, the Dance of Songs. It's getting dark in the city of Amritsar. Shops are shutting down. Street lamps come on, casting dim yellow pools of light. Rickshaws and bicycles hustle to make their way home. A handcart loaded with gunny bags wobbles down the street. Even Dwarka's kite shop is winding up. The old Sardar tailor pulls his rickety shutter down, gets on his bicycle and pedals away. Shani's voice can be heard. She's urging her buffaloes home. Grubby little boys, the mochis, play outside in the gully, and behind the threshold of the big Phatak, the iron gate, 2 little sisters, Bobby and Dolly, go about their lives. This seems like it's from hundreds of years ago, but it actually dates back to 1956. It's one of my earliest memories in which I'm around 4 years old. It's the street I remember the most, the street on which I lived. A little girl darts out of a house crying, "I want to go to my mama." "Come back," shouts my Sardi, my nanny, from inside the big gate. "No, I want to go to my mama." "Your mama has gone to the cinema. You get in here at once." "I will also go to the cinema," she retorts and runs down the street. Suddenly, something stirs in the air. There's a muffled grunt in the sky and the breeze changes. The sky turns red. Tin sheds begin to flap and rattle. The smell of wind on earth. It's a dust storm. Stray pieces of paper littering the ground outside the bookbinder's shop fly up and float in the air. Bicycles fall in a slow, studied motion along the wall of the cinema hall. The wooden shutter of Gyan Halwai's shop tilts and slips out of its clamp. He stands with his arms outstretched, holding it with all his Malai lassi strength against the wind, his lungi threatening to fly off. A rickshaw puller pedals backward and sideways. The world seems to slant at the edges. Dust storms the streets. My Sardi's voice cuts through the mayhem. "Stop, I say, get back. Girl, it's dark." The girl is not coming back. She runs all the way to the end of the street and suddenly finds herself in the middle of Katra Sher Singh Chowk, in front of Regent Talkies, surrounded by huge cinema posters. The posters begin to tear from the whiplash of the wind. Sir, sir. Faces of actors and actresses fold up and slap against the dry whitewash of the decrepit cinema hall. Unable to keep her eyes open from the dust, wind and tears, the little girl hides her face in her sleeve. At her feet swirl particles of dust, torn scraps of paper, bright orange and pink trimmings from the tailor's shop, and gather momentum. She stands still for a while, watching the little merry-go-round around her dotted rubber booties until her eyes fall upon something. Across the street, the plotwala is doing a tandav. He is the skinny man who sells little leaflets with the plot and songs of Hindi films printed on them. A strong gust whisks away the sepia-colored leaves from his hands and flings them into the wind. They soar in the air, going up and up in circles, dodging the poor man's attempts to retrieve them. Tossed into the wind, the yellow sheets somersault, now diving to his feet, now rising as if in sudden applause. He leaps and plunges by the side of the road, slapping his arms around, hurling himself at the musical notes. One leaf slips into two and two into four, till the songs dance above his gaunt, lanky frame. He dances with the songs, the poor plotwala, trying in vain to hang on to his only means of livelihood as it slips away into grainy air. No one notices the little girl as she stands in the middle of the chalk, enthralled by the dance of songs, her large eyes filled with tears, but she forgets to cry. There you are, Marjani. My Sardi steps forward, scoops me up in one sweeping movement, lodges me onto her hip, strides down the streets and puts me back inside the house where I belong. As we enter, my grandmother rises from her chair, pointing a finger at me. No little girls from good homes ever go out to cinemas on the street. Let me tell you, my mother, she was born and brought up in Burma, Punjabi family, but settled in Burma. The family came across back to India during World War II, when the Japanese invaded Burma. The Japanese invasion happened in 1942, and that's when the Indians had to flee Burma. There was this huge exodus of Indians from Burma in the year 1942. Nobody seems to talk much about it. I don't know, very little has been written about this exodus, but this is a very significant part of Indian experience. And there, my mother, when I was little, my mother would tell me stories of, being from an Arya Samaji family, we didn't hear stories from Ramayana or Mahabharata. There was nothing. It was very abstract, just that one havan जो संडेज को होता था, कोई ओकेजन पे या कभी कभी ऐसे ही बिना ओकेजन के भी हो जाता था. And it was basically, we were told कि purification of the environment के लिए है, और बहुत ज़्यादा नहीं, मतलब it was very simplistic ritual तो था ही, लेकिन बहुत ही minimalist type of thing. So I only grew up with stories from Burma. My mother's growing up years in Burma, though that was my mythology, that was the stories I grew up with. तो कुछ अब मुझे लगता है जब मैं ये सब देखती हूँ मोटिव्स और अपना कितना डिपिक्शन है ना अपनी माइथोलॉजी और अपनी रिलीजियस टेक्स्ट से, तो मुझे लगता है कुछ छूट गया क्या. I never got this. I don't know who these people are, who these characters are. I mean gods and goddesses जो भी हैं उनका, पर वो उस वक्त कभी कुछ लगा नहीं. बचपन में नहीं लगा कि वी आर मिसिंग आउट ऑन समथिंग. सत्संग होते थे अमृतसर में, तो आम होते थे और सुनते थे कि राज आंटी चली गई हैं सत्संग पे और कोई और भी लोग जाते थे. We never somehow, my parents, my father was an atheist, my mother, she was a painter, father was a writer, तो वो अपनी दुनिया में वो एक मस्त रहते थे और ज़्यादातर पढ़ाई पे ही ज़ोर था कि किताबें, बस किताब होनी चाहिए हाथ में. फादर वुड साइकिल पे जाते थे कॉलेज पढ़ाने, हिंदू कॉलेज में. ही वॉज अ प्रोफेसर, ही हैड स्टडीड इन गवर्नमेंट कॉलेज लाहौर, ही वॉज अ स्टूडेंट ऑफ इंग्लिश. He had done his masters in English literature वहाँ से. और my mother had studied in a convent school in Mandalay. तो एक अलग सा थोड़ा माहौल था. Though we were in the middle of this city which had all these very interesting characters around. Characters इसलिए बोलती हूँ क्योंकि वो सिनेमा की आदत हो गई है to look at people and say, अच्छा वो वाला character, ये वाला character, but I mean people, people that I grew up around with, who were around me. तो वो जो stories थी वो ज़्यादातर those were the stories that groomed me, I think. वहाँ का Buddhist ambience, यहाँ तो या तो अजान और या फिर वो मंदिर का जो भी हमारा है काफ़ी rigorous है, so it's very active, it's very rigorous. So in comparison to this, where I was growing up, there were these stories from Burma, how the Buddhist monks would subah, you would see them filing down the street and in red, and वो atmosphere जो मामा describe किया करती थी वहाँ के monasteries and the gompas and having gone to school in being brought up by the British nuns and everything. तो एक kind of a contrast था. Though I went to a convent school, हमारी nuns भी, they were all from the Belgian congregation, they were all from Europe, European nuns, all of them, Sacred Heart Convent in Amritsar. तो एक मज़े का contrast था कि वहाँ स्कूल में नन्स हैं, आप बिल्कुल पंजाबी में बात करते हुए पकड़े जाते थे तो आपको फ़ाइन हो जाता था. और यहाँ पीछे मोचियों का मोहल्ला था तो वो I would hear them. I mean, I didn't know as a child, didn't know these were 4-letter words, but they were cussing all the time. So we used to hear that. We didn't know. हमें भी लगता था ठीक है ये भाषा है. So it was a very interesting mix of
Punjabi was spoken at home.
Punjabi and English. And English.
Right.
Yeah, because और कोई हिंदी नहीं. My mother was not good with Hindi. She used to speak Punjabi and then she had her immaculately well spoken English, तो इस तरह का जो माहौल है. I want to read something. I talk a little bit about the stories from Burma, but then I talk about one first proper childhood memory. My one first proper childhood memory has to do with a boy with a bowl. One evening, Mama, along with some other women, had gone to a house in the neighborhood to distribute milk to needy children. I decided to tag along to do my first bit of social work. I was little then and clung to the pallu of my mother's sari as she went about her mission of mercy. The little boy with the dark complexion was even littler. Just as the ladies finished distributing the milk and were about to climb down, he appeared at the bottom of the narrow staircase, a small bowl in his hand, looking up expectantly. "Oh no, there's no milk left, bachche, it's all finished." The boy just stood there looking up at us, his eyes large and luminous in his dark face, dressed only in a dirty banyan, the rest of his skinny body as naked as the day he was born. "Why have you come so late, my child?" Mama asked, feeling sorry for the little one. My mother," he began breathlessly, panting from the effort of climbing the first 3 steps to get inside the building. My mother did not have a katori. She had to borrow it. His eyes shone with pale anticipation. But the milk is finished, Mama repeated, holding on to my hand. The small dark face grew darker. In that moment, at age 4, I experienced a hollow feeling in my stomach as I stood looking at this tiny human being who seemed not more than 2 years old. This image would remain with me for a long time to come. It was the first time I felt empathy for someone. I remember recognizing this as a new emotion. While feeling sorry for him, I was watching myself, watching the boy and feeling his pain. Maybe I should have used a better word here. This perhaps was my first lesson in acting, taking a mental note of an experience and storing it away. In my later years, I would draw upon this emotion and use it in many ways. Sitting at a roadside cafe on 33rd Street and Lexington Avenue, he'd suddenly appear before me, the boy with the bowl. Sometimes I was looking at life from the top of the staircase, and at other times I was the little boy with the small dark face with large luminous eyes standing at the bottom of the stairs with an empty bowl in my hand. So these are very early. मैं क्योंकि वो pages थोड़े से I will read. I can read. Oh, this is one of my favorite chapters called Neri Ai Neri Ai. Anybody understand Punjabi here? कोई नहीं? You do ना? Neri Ai. हाँ तो बोल दो फिर ठीक. So अंधेरी जो है वो बस हाँ अंधेरी. Neri Ai. मैं ये पढ़ूंगी बस उसके बाद हम गप्पे मारेंगे, ठीक है? It's too quiet. Thanks. A storm is brewing. A tin sheet rumbles in the wind. Dark clouds roll over. Everyone runs to their terraces, rolls up mattresses and pulls them under cover. There's the scent of rain on earth. These are the images, sounds, smells I so remember, like it was yesterday. Neri Ai was such a thrilling soundtrack during those days when we lived in a country called childhood. What fascinated me most about the landscape of Punjab were the dust storms. I found them exciting, filled with mystery, creating a sensory experience that was hard to match. I loved the Neri and I'd actually wait for it, almost certain that it would be followed by a torrid downpour of rain. They provided the element of drama to our everyday lives. Except for the grit that got into my eyes, experiencing a dust storm was thrilling, not least for the way in which it transformed the landscape. Suddenly, in the middle of the day, the sky would turn pink, then a deep magenta, and finally become pitch black, as if the sun had been blown out. My eyes would brighten each time there was another ripple in the air and the wind started to howl. Black clouds rolled over the city, turning day into night, and yellow bulbs blinked to life, lighting up the streets. One particular dust storm when I was around 10 is etched in my memory. I'm on the terrace, enthralled by the spectacle that is beginning to unfold. I see Jeet pulling off the clothes flapping on the clothesline, her expression dark and inward. I hear a sharp crack of a whip, then a low hostile rumble, constant and unnerving. A stray kite A stray kite caught in the electric wire starts to flutter. The sky reddens. The wind picks up, turns into a squall. Rickshaw pullers scramble about in the dust-stormed street. Scraps of paper whirl and tumble madly in the thickened air. I hear Mama's voice loud and clear. Deepi, come down at once. Why? Why did I have to go down when life was happening up here? I stay up on the Barsati, watching everything, and I wait. Brief gusts of wind move things around in the world. The tin sheets on the Barsati begin to rattle. A rat-tat-tat hammering provides a steady beat to everything else that is going on. The bedsheet on Didi's cot swells up in slow motion, then abruptly folds up and turns over itself. The table lamp beside Pitaji's, I'd call him Piti, beside Piti's bed sways and rolls over onto the floor. Spreading outward from the horizon, the sky, for as far as I can see, is an expanse of pink. I look across to the mosque. Beneath the dome, I see serried ranks of pigeons squeeze into themselves and wait, their feathers rising and falling in the wind. They huddle together. From the tumult all around, they know something is about to happen. Another image slowly comes into focus. The sky clouds over. As Didi and I wobble up and down the gully, she's teaching me how to ride a bicycle. She holds the bike firmly while I try to mount it. A little boy comes wheelbarrowing and I fall. I try again and I run into a wall. The sky rumbles. The weather begins to change. We girls rush back home. Mama grabs her oil sheets from the Veda and runs for cover. Bachchad aan wali hai? It's going to rain, says Pitaji. That word sends a ripple down my spine. Bachchar, the first shower, the monsoon wind whips in. The rains come to Amritsar in July for 15 days, beating down like Mastana's wedding band. A crack of thunder and the downpour begins. The storm water pipe from our terrace rapidly floods the courtyard. Mama's Raat Ki Rani slowly wilts and droops to the floor. The buffalo shed, the mochi gully, the tonga stand at Hallgate, the mosque, the pigeons, nothing is spared. It pours everywhere. Little boys make tiny paper boats and float them and in the streets. The monsoon is here in full splendor. Excited, I run to the terrace and huddle and bundle up under the tin shed, watching the shower slanting in from all sides, witnessing the downpour, its serenade on the roof. The houses are just a blur on the horizon, the terraces lacking all definition. Each bricked edge merges into the next. The city is watercolor washed into the dark grey skyline. A song is playing in my head. Eventually it all ends up in a song. Sitting on the rolled up mattress, tucked in a corner, I sing my rain songs. Of course, all filmy songs, you know. For the cobbler clan, the monsoons were a challenge. Little kids waddled across the gully, now turned into a slushy dirt track. We would hear the ghetto dwellers squelching their way through the night, trying to throw plastic sheets over their mud shacks to keep them from dripping, and it continues to pour. Later, when the rain abated, little crawlies came out of the ground, creating squiggly burrows in the mud, etching the sodden earth with their languorous trail. We kids would sprinkle salt on the earthworm and watch it wriggle and coil into itself. As children, we could be innocently cruel. Monsoons, for all their hold on me, also brought destruction in their wake. There was a flood the city still remembers, the flood of 1955. The Bhakra Dam near Ropar had broken and there was devastation everywhere. It was the time when Bhandari Bridge was under construction and the walled city was completely immersed in thick, muddy water. People hung on to electric poles to save their lives. According to the Ambarsaris, water was coming in from outside of Hallgate and rushing towards Lahore at great speed, you know, the speed of a train. One monsoon, let me skip this one. Let me skip a little bit. One of my most splendid monsoon nights came to me in the shape of a newborn calf that Charlie gave birth to. Now, I had names. When I was a child, I had names for all the buffaloes. You know, एक सरदार जी थे, वो पगड़ियाँ रंगा करते थे, रंग करते थे पगड़ियों को. He was a dye करते थे. I used to, in my head, I used to call him Color Singh. You know, so there was a world within my world, you know, which was all my mental inside my head, and it was very close but different, very close to the real, but it was a takeoff from the real, and I used to love living within that. तो वो बीच में किताब में throughout the book you will find, you know, those names and those metaphors also. In the form of a newborn calf that Charlie gave birth to. Late that night, there was a banging on the phatak and a voice called out, "Come, Shani's buffalo is giving birth." Excited, we wriggled out of bed. Mama grabbed umbrellas and covered us in plastic hoods. The lights had gone out and it was raining heavily. We splashed across the gully and lined up at Shani's slushy tin shed. There was Raj auntie from upstairs, Krishna, and some mochi kids wrapped in gunny bags. Sardari Lal stood holding a gas light in his hand. In the dimly lit night, we all stood waiting for the moment to happen. With the rain pouring down and the lights flickering, it was a long stretched out moment when we witnessed a little calf come into this world, his glassy black skin shimmering in the yellow kerosene lamp. Even as Shani was trying to wipe him clean, the calf almost at once opened his huge dark eyes and looked at the world around him. Against the backdrop of a street light, dripping wet, under a cluster of black umbrellas, we all stood gawking at him, till all of a sudden he slipped out of Shani's hands and fell to the ground. Everyone gasped, but then, after a few moments of flailing his limbs about, the baby buffalo swiftly swayed upright. Everyone cheered. Fascinated, I looked up at Mama. Her eyes were moist. She held us close. Didi softly uttered, "So black," and I whispered, "Like velvet." Instantly, the little one became my favorite of all the buffaloes. I knew what I was going to call him, Black Velvet. So, thank you. Thank you. There is सुनिए आप इधर आओ यार, मुझे पता नहीं चल रहा आप सुन रहे हो कि नहीं. अच्छा चलो बैठ. हाँ, इसको खींच भी सकते हो. हाँ हाँ.
इसको थोड़ा इधर कर लेते हैं.
So when I
थोड़ा इसको तान ले कोई.
अच्छा हाँ. A little bit. Okay. So like I said, that to me the writing of this book was not at all like an autobiography, though it is a memoir, but the challenge was, and as I went on, like I said 20 years ago लिखना शुरू किया, फिर cross checking stories जो किसी एक family member ने बोल दिया, तो the same story I would call up my Mama ji, Brian uncle in London, say, "Uncle, आपको पता है ऐसे हुआ था, मम्मा ने ऐसे बताया था, and then he would confirm something, then I call my masi. I mean, this went on and on for years. This process just went on, and I thought, ये किताब तो कभी होगी नहीं. I mean, the more I get into it, it just goes on expanding. मेरी अपनी memories हैं. Then there's the partition. Then of course, you know, first the exodus of Indians from Burma. That there's a whole big chapter in the book about that. And I'll tell you about that little bit. Nani, we used to call her बड़ी मम्मी. जब उनको घर छोड़ना पड़ा मैंडले का, तो उन्होंने कहा कि सब कुछ छोड़ सकती हूँ, बट मैं अब ग्रामोफोन नहीं छोड़ के जाऊँगी. So this lovely German machine, yes, वो कहती हैं कि मेरे पीठ पे चाहे बांध दो, बट मैं नहीं इसको छोड़ूंगी. And the coolies and the other family members, they said, Mummy, how can we possibly carry? We are walking across to India. We are going to walk for months. We can't carry this. इसको छोड़ो आप, बड़े वहाँ gramophone मिल जाएंगे. But the story of the gramophone, when I joined college in New York, Hunter, when I started in New York, the first essay that I wrote in my English class was called Little Woman and the Gramophone. So it is all about her carrying the gramophone across, and then बहुत फिर वो उस exodus में काफ़ी, it was a very disturbing account actually. When I read now on the internet, बहुत लोग ख़त्म हो गए उस journey में.
It was a very grueling journey.
Yeah.
Very arduous journey.
Yeah. People, there was infection, there was बीमारी. हाँ,
लूट खसोट मची
वहाँ वो भी हुआ, बीमारी हुई. हाँ, नहीं वो पता नहीं लोग, I mean people died on the way.
So your family went through two partitions.
Two partitions,
Burma
yes,
and
yeah. So at some point, and she also carried the 100 records. 100 records, long play records. और वो जुतिका रॉय, कानन बाला, ये वो all those, you know, और बंगाल, बर्मा एंड नहीं all हिंदुस्तानी, all. हाँ, वो कलकत्ता का बहुत बड़ा. My mother, because she was very good looking woman, she used to call herself the beauty queen of Bengal. तो उनको बहुत, she had great affiliation with, you know, for the Bengali culture. तो वो एक एक करके इस एक्सोडस में जब बहुत बुरे हाल में जब हुए, तो एक एक करके उनको सबने कहा कि मम्मी थ्रो द रिकॉर्ड्स. तो वो रोती रहीं, तो रोती गई, और एक एक करके कानन बाला, सी borders went into flames through the exodus, you know, to India.
And what were your father's stories?
My father was, हाँ वो नहीं आए, मतलब वो पढ़ते थे. My grandfather's story is very fascinating because he was from a little place called Jalalabad, near on the Beas the Kande, on the Beas river, about an hour from Amritsar. He was born there. वहाँ स्कूल नहीं था, तो चार एक जमात पढ़ के फिर वो गांव, एक दूसरे गांव में पैदल चल के जाते थे. 5th class onwards, and he did 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th. After that he came to Amritsar. और एक लाला जी थे कोई, उनके 4 बेटे थे, गुड फॉर नथिंग, चौथी भी पास नहीं की किसी ने. एंड दिस लाला वॉज डाइंग टू हेल्प एजुकेट अ चाइल्ड. तो उनको मेरे दादा मिल गए कि ये लड़का पैदल चल के 6 मील जाता है आता है स्कूल पढ़ने, और इस तरह का. तो 6 मील तो नहीं थे, शायद 4 मील थे. फैमिली स्टोरीज थोड़ी एग्जैजरेट भी होती. तो 4 के 6 मील करने में क्या, या तो उन्होंने, देन ही took this child under his wing and said कि तुम जितना पढ़ोगे मैं तुम्हें पढ़ाऊँ, जितना तुम पढ़ना चाहते हो. So he became a leading criminal lawyer. उनकी स्टोरी ही बहुत फैसिनेटिंग है, अलग ही है कि कैसे वो जब पार्टीशन हुआ तो he started फाइटिंग फॉर ऑल द. पार्टीशन में बहुत नाटक हुआ. सी हमारा जो घर था, इट वॉज नेक्स्ट टू द मॉस्क. ना 2 भाई थे मुस्लिम बैरिस्टर्स दोनों. एक ने एक भाई ने मस्जिद बनाई और दूसरे ने ये मकान बनाया. ओके, सो माई व्हेन इन 33 या जब भी व्हेन माई ग्रैंडफादर, 2 पंडित लोगों ने ये घर खरीदा. बीच में एक दीवार थी, बहुत ऊंची सी दीवार, उसमें एक दरवाज़ा था. ही हैड 2 वाइफ्स, 2 फैमिलीज, आई मीन 2 बीवियाँ थी उनकी, वो दोनों, और बीच में दरवाज़ा था, वो उससे उनका आना जाना था. तो जब ये 2 पंडित लोग इन्होंने घर खरीदा तो वो दरवाजे को चिनवा दिया गया. एंड देन वी बिकेम नेबर्स. एंड तो जब पार्टीशन राइट्स जब शुरू हुए, अमृतसर में जब राइट्स हुए, तो मुसलमानों ने घर जलाने की कोशिश की ये कह के कि ये पंडितों का घर है, और हिंदुओं ने उसके ऊपर आके ग्रीन मार्क लगा दिया कि मुसलमान की प्रॉपर्टी है, इसको जलाना है. तो thrice our house was put on fire and saved at the last minute कि बुझा दिया. मतलब neighbors and all that people came in. So there were many stories. My mother's family, my mother was in Lahore at the time. जब राइट्स शुरू हुए, जब बर्निंग कहते ना, अग्गां लगियां, जदों अग्गां लगियां, तो these girls, they were just I mean teenagers. These girls, they were studying. Mama was going to an art school. BC Sanyal, am I right? BC Sanyal उनका लाहौर में बहुत फेमस था आर्ट कॉलेज. तो मामा was studying there with the likes of Margot and Amarnath Sehgal and yeah. तो these girls were trapped वहाँ पे. और जब मास्टर तारा सिंह गुजरे हैं brandishing his sword on Mall Road, जिस दिन से riots start हो गए, these 2 girls were caught up and they were trying to find a way. Finally a Muslim टोंगे वाला, an old man, उन्होंने लड़कियों को बोरियों के नीचे छुपा के, जैसे तूड़ी वूड़ी रखी होती है, उसके साथ में इन दोनों लड़कियों को घुसा दिया, ऊपर से बोरियां डाल दी, and he brought them to the safety of a camp. तो इस तरह की stories, I mean my favorite story of course is the old Muslim टोंगे वाला, because you always want to carry those stories forward जो कि you know where there is some goodness, you know, in हाँ. तो इस तरह की.
The third partition was the move to
and they my देखो, एक तो पहले वहाँ से सिर्फ ग्रामोफोन लेके आए, आज वो ग्रामोफोन मेरे हिमाचल के स्टूडियो में पड़ा है. आई हैव इट हियर. तो उसके बाद सेकंड टाइम लाहौर छोड़ना पड़ा. अभी वहाँ सेटल हुए थे तो लाहौर छोड़ के आना पड़ा. सो ट्वाइस रेफ्यूजीज. सो व्हेन माय, जब मेरी पेरेंट्स का जब रिश्ता हुआ तो माय
कैसे हुआ बर्मा और लाहौर?
वो हुआ तो अरेंज्ड सब उस तरह से. अमृतसर में जब वापस आ गए, है ना, तो किसी ने करवाया कि भाई वहाँ बर्मा की फैमिली है, अच्छे हैं सब, गंगाहर्स. तो इस तरह से माय हाँ, रूबीज पता नहीं नथिंग, नॉट एट दैट टाइम, नो. हाँ, ग्रामोफोन वाज मोर इम्पोर्टेंट. या तो बिकॉज ग्रैंड पेरेंट्स, ग्रैंडफादर एंड ग्रैंडमदर वाज अ मेजर सोशल वर्कर. उन्होंने चाइल्ड मैरिज अबॉलिश करने की कोशिश की पूरे वहाँ पंजाब में, और उन्होंने विडोज़ का जो इल ट्रीटमेंट ऑफ और शैबी ट्रीटमेंट ऑफ एनी वुमेन, नॉट जस्ट विडोज़, एनी गर्ल, यंग गर्ल, दहेज के लिए कोई तंग कर रहा है, कुछ कर रहा है, तो इतने ज़्यादा उनके. अच्छा, एक बड़ी इंटरेस्टिंग फैक्ट है कि दादाजी पंडित ज्ञानचंद शर्मा, ही वॉज अ कट्टर जनसंगी, एंड माई दादी मनोरमा देवी शर्मा वॉज अ स्टॉन्च कांग्रेसाइट. दोनों आराम से घर में, कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं, कभी उनका क्लैश नहीं, कभी आर्ग्यूमेंट नहीं, ऑलवेज एन एक्सचेंज ऑफ ओपिनियन, नेवर आर्ग्यूमेंट, नेवर काइंड ऑफ शो डाउन ऑन एनी, कोई भी डिस्कोर्स, कोई भी. हाँ, और जाते थे गांधी ग्राउंड में, वो कांग्रेस की तरफ से फाइट कर रही होती उनके कैंप में, ये इस कैंप में, और घर आके डाइनिंग टेबल पे बैठ के खाना वाना खाते थे और डिस्कस करते थे, एंड दे हैड अ वंडरफुल मैरिज. तो ये भी एक मतलब उस ज़माने का एक एग्जाम्पल है. और जब मेरे पेरेंट्स की शादी हुई तो माय फादर, बिकॉज ही वाज वेरी अगेंस्ट, दहेज एंड ऑल दीज थिंग्स. तो उन्होंने 1 रुपया एक थाली में उन्होंने कहा हम 1 रुपया लेंगे दहेज, टोकन दहेज एज अ रस्म के तौर पे, अगर कोई ऐसा है कि कुछ देना होता है तो. सो दैट बिकेम अ बिग टॉक ऑफ द टाउन के थाली में 1 कॉइन रख के उन्होंने कहा ये दहेज, हम इससे ज़्यादा हम कुछ नहीं लेंगे और आपको वी न्यू के दे न्यू यू नो refugees. तो इस तरह की stories हैं. I mean, I've tried. Of course, I wrote not only this family history. I wrote about the films that influenced me when I was growing up. बचपन में कौन सी फिल्मों ने impact किया. I was a big, huge मीना कुमारी fan. तो जब मैं देखती थी मीना कुमारी on the big screen, I was about 8, 9. I used to think कि हाँ एक दिन आएगा जब आई विल बी अप देयर एंड ऑल दीज पीपल ना ये सब मुझे देखेंगे. हाँ हाँ अरे बिल्कुल ये पहला मतलब नो आई वर्कड आई वॉज फोकस्ड आई वर्कड टूवर्ड्स इट. ऐसे चांस वांस नहीं. मुझे लगता है जो लोग बोलते हैं ना आई नेवर वांटेड टू जॉइन फिल्म्स, तो फिर क्यों भाई. बहुत हैं जो जान दे देंगे टू वांट टू डू समथिंग. But no, it was my big dream actually. And I thought कि ये लोग मेरे साथ relate कर रहे होंगे. मैं रोऊंगी तो ये लोग रोएंगे, मैं हंसूंगी तो हंसेंगे. तो इस तरह का एक connect रहेगा हमारा. हाँ बिल्कुल. I was one of those girls who would be howling in the theatre, no matter how stupid the scene is. मतलब रोना जिस सीन में थोड़ा भी कुछ भी एग्जैजरेटेड भी कोई इमोशनल आ गया तो आल तो धाड़े मार मार के रोना. इट्स हॉरिबल. वी यूज्ड टू हैव दीज बॉयज यू नो फ्रॉम अदर स्कूल्स who would be giggling in the back कि क्या है रोना धोना.
That's what my daughters do when I howl in movies.
Yeah, they'd be giggling and shifting in their chairs कि क्या है.
How did the US happen?
US though my father migrated. Father migrated. Yeah.
And was that a wrench? Did you miss your mitti, so to say? Did you miss your familiar surrounds?
No, I missed the house. We had to let go of the house. It was falling apart. It had to be disposed of. That is the only thing I miss.
But that was a new exciting life.
हाँ मतलब we were very excited about migrating. So.
And then the decision to come back was to chase the dream.
To come, yes. Coming back was, yeah, I wanted to. After finishing my college, of course, you know. उससे पहले तो बात ही नहीं. हाँ पढ़ाई कर लो उसके बाद जो भी करना है. उसके बाद, of course नहीं था. They were shocked. She's such an introvert teenager. इसके दिमाग में किसने डाल दिया ये कि फिल्म और ये सब. Though my mother had her share of fascination for drama, dance. She had a beautiful voice. तो पहले तो मैंने उनको plays करते देखा भी है when I was small. I've seen her perform in Chitra Talkies, भगवान दादा and Achla Sachdev and Shama. ऐसे कुछ artists आए थे बॉम्बे से. वो मामा used to perform. जब पार्टीशन हुआ है माई मदर यूज्ड टू परफॉर्म ऑन स्टेज चंदा इकट्ठा करने के लिए रेफ्यूजीज जो आए थे लाहौर से एंड या उनके लिए. बट बर्मा से
लेकिन मुझे इतना स्टोरी कुछ भी
पता नहीं.
कब वो लोग आए जी, बस यही मालूम है कि मेरे माय ग्रैंडमदर एंड माय फादर्स ग्रैंडमदर दे बोथ यूज्ड टू स्मोक.
अच्छा.
बहुत यूज्ड टू स्मोक सिगरेट.
हाँ.
पहले फिर उसके बाद बीड़ी.
अच्छा.
They told me that Burmese ladies they smoke.
Yes.
Only
Yes.
So what are your?
But such simple people. I took my mother back to Burma when after 60 years after she had left her homeland.
And she loved it.
she would be yearning to go back to Burma. मैंने सोच के रखा था कि मैं I have to take her back. मैं तो लेके जाऊंगी
How
मामा
was the
को.
experience?
Oh, it was amazing. Or Burma seemed like just the way she had described it during my childhood.
Wow.
ऐसा लगता है जैसे यहाँ तो कोई चेंज ही नहीं है. People were still very simple. अब तो खैर बहुत चाइनीज़ और ये सब हो गया है वहाँ. अब different है. But when I took her 2000 में, she said उस तरह दो उस तरह.
From Burma कहाँ आए कलकत्ता?
They came क्या है वो रूट उसका, तम्मू पलेल रोड रूट कहा जाता था उसको. पलेल एंड तम्मूज बॉर्डर्स ऑफ बर्मा इन इंडिया. वहाँ से फिर नागालैंड, मिज़ोरम या नागालैंड शायद उस तरफ. एंड देन दे केम टू अ पॉइंट जहाँ से ट्रेन मिलती, train towards Punjab. They took a train. At some point, they took a train to.
My ancestors, they traveled to Chittagong.
हाँ.
Burma to Chittagong. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
one of our family, Dr. Billimore is a very famous. He died. He left. He told his family to leave Burma, but he stayed on and served the country, and he died in Burma.
Ah.
He's a Parsi, and we were fire temple in Rangoon also.
अच्छा.
And he couldn't make it back to Bombay.
Yeah.
He came by Chittagong.
Yes. You know the family first
So
all
there's a tiny Parsi community
in
Rangoon.
really in Rangoon. Yeah.
Unfortunately, he never made back. His family got back.
Ah.
He died. I mean, they don't know where what happened to him, but he never
Achha.
came back to India.
Didn't come.
My
You know.
family, they used to do business in Burma,
हाँ.
maybe of spice, and when they traveled to Chittagong, there also they opened up the business of spice.
अच्छा. You know when the Japanese invasion happened, there was a very odd story that my mother used to tell me. एक उनका young cousin होता था, 13 साल का लड़का, Roland. See, because Roland, because my mother's family, everybody had these beautiful Sanskrit names, Gayatri, Savitri, Himadri. My mother's name was Himadri. But Gayatri became good because of the nuns, the English nuns. But Gayatri was called Gertie, Savitri was called Sarah, Himadri was called Winnie, and Bhanu was called Lily, Anirudh, Brian, Andrew. You know, these names were given by all the nuns. So they stayed with these names forever because nobody called them other names by other names. So एक story थी of during the Japanese invasion, there was this young boy in the family, my mama's cousin brother, Roland. उसको Japanese आती थी, बोलना आती थी, और Burmese तो आती थी.
Your mother spoke Burmese too?
My mother did, yeah. My मासीज all did, yeah. तो उसको Japanese ने अपने पास रख लिया. Torture camps. When the Japanese would torture the Burmese people, he was made to sit there and translate. ये पूछते थे, वो जवाब देते थे, वो जो भी बोलते थे, फिर ये जो बोलते थे उनको. That boy lost his mind by the time the war ended. He came back to India, but he came back as a crazed, traumatized youngster. That story kind of never really left me. That story.
There's been no writing about that.
There's hardly anything. पर अगर सर्च करो तो ये एक्सोडस के बारे में है लिखा है, अब लोगों ने लिखा है. एंड इन फैक्ट आई वाज टोल्ड कि आपकी किताब के बाद ये स्टोरीज आएंगी, निकलेंगी. मैंने कहा निकलनी चाहिए, you know, there should be.
There are now books about the Chinese experience of the 1962 war in India, where they were all put into externment camps. They were picked out of Calcutta, wherever they were in India,
Yeah,
and put into camps.
yeah,
And then they went back to where they came from in Calcutta. And they had not nurtured that resentment which I think
yeah, बिल्कुल.
but that story is also now beginning.
Yeah, beginning to surface. Yeah.
On your story about anybody related to cinema, is
I've written, हाँ, अच्छा, अच्छा, हाँ,
Yeah, she
हाँ, ah, yes, yes, yes. I've written about Balraj Sahni ji's visit to Amritsar. He came to perform a play in Gandhi Ground. It was called Kanak Di Balli. So my father took me, I was 63. I was 11 by then. Or no, 61. 9 years old I think. तो पिताजी मुझे ले गए, तो मैं अपनी ऑटोग्राफ बुक ले करके, सर्दियों का टाइम था, और बाहर ओपन एयर में, वो ओपन एयर जो और स्टेज बना हुआ था, उस पर उनका प्ले हो रहा था. So that is one chapter in my book where I talk about how I got his autograph, how I felt when he turned around. Itne sare young boys, you know, those, all the jats and everybody, all those boys from different villages, they all come, and youth festival hota tha. तो उसमें वो प्ले करने आए थे. And then how I, little one, managed to, you know, somehow get through, and then he signed.
Yeah.
I hope all of
Very,
you
very.
will get to read it, hopefully. And of course, I also studied in America. Mein to I studied American theatre and photography. I studied photography. Camera leke Manhattan mein ghumte rehte the. We'd get assignments like vague ones, you know. Go to 23rd Street on a Sunday, jab sab shops, everything is closed, and go and take pictures. So हम लोग क्या squashed Coca-Cola cans की photographs थे, garbage cans.
Okay, there's one thing. Can I ask you one thing?
Yeah.
It's not about the book. There's one movie which I was very impressed about. Freaky Chakra.
Freaky Chakra. Yeah.
Okay. How did you think of doing that movie?
So Ravini is
It was a very, out
Yeah.
of the box.
Yeah. I start being a cantankerous 40-year-old spinster who the writer imagines that she's fallen in love with a 25-year-old youngster, and then he imagines, it's his imagination, but I had to play it. Yeah, so from a cantankerous, this very irritable 40 plus to play then a 25, yeah, and gooey-eyed and all that.
You guys have not seen it.
It's a wonderful role.
YouTube पे है.
YouTube पे है.
YouTube पे होगा शायद. Freaky Chakra. Yeah. It was a challenging role.
I actually remember her.
So was it just instinct, intuition that led you to do the kind of films you did? Because you really didn't falter. You didn't make too many mistakes. You never got down to doing that garish costume. And,
Those I
camera
never wanted to do.
But so it was instinct, intuition.
Yeah.
Sometimes your story पढ़ते you never really know how it's going to play out.
Yeah.
पता नहीं लगता.
हाँ नहीं, but देखो, the kind of setup it is, you do know. When I came in, I grew up on commercial cinema. Sadhna was my, you know, हाँ, तो वही सब सो देख के. But by the time I came back, I was also exposed to world cinema in New York. So by the time I came back, I was not going to become the Hindi film heroine catering to the male fantasy, audience.
कोशिश हुई to get you that way.
पता नहीं, I think from the
Red
beginning
Sea,
my
the village ballet, the innocent
हाँ वो
village ballet.
घाघरा
वो
वगैरह
सब ऑफर कर रहा होगा.
हाँ हुए वैसे भी roles हाँ, but I was quite clear. No, I wanted to play women who were kind of recognizable. They are people, you know.
Real people.
हाँ. I wanted to play women
And then Sai
of
Kalasthi
my
will
time.
help because
Sai
Wonder
was,
Woman,
yeah.
Chashma Badoo,
Sai was,
one
yeah,
from
my favoriteest director.
And Shah
Sai.
was
I didn't do much work.
वो जो
2-3 सीन थे जुनून में, उसके बाद तो मैंने काम नहीं किया शाम के साथ. Didn't do much.
That's strange.
हाँ,
Because you were,
Yeah.
you were
Yeah, would have
more
fit
today's
in.
mold.
हाँ,
But I guess it
पर
was a
पता नहीं
Shabana
कुछ हुआ
Smita
नहीं.
obsession.
हाँ उनका था. Yeah.
Like Neena Gupta talks about it too, कि somehow उन दोनों को मिलता था मुझे sideline.
वो तो बोलती है दीप्ति को सब मिल जाते थे जो मुझे मिलने चाहिए थे. सबको लगता है उसको सब मिल जाते थे, रोल्स मुझे मिलने चाहिए थे, इस तरह के ये सब होता रहता है. Most difficult for me, I had to do a film called Ankahi, which was directed by Amol Palekar, and there I had to play a mentally disturbed girl. I had a tough time because I went back to the asylum. I wanted to go there. I wanted to just do a little homework, study women, but I kind of got involved, you know. I started getting to know them personally. तो मैं 2-3 दिन के लिए गई थी, मैं तो कुछ 20-23 दिन वहाँ बैठ के स्क्रिप्ट लिखने लग गई. Yeah.
Never thought of directing, Deepti?
I've directed one movie. It is on Netflix. It's called 2 पैसे की धूप 4 आने की बारिश. It's on Netflix.
उसके बारे में तारीफ सुनी है.
हाँ, it is. It's a film I wrote, directed, produced.
किसने
Manisha plays the aging
मैंने उसकी बहुत
prostitute.
अभी क्यों हाल ही में तारीफ कर रहा था.
हाँ. And Rajit Kapoor plays the struggling gay songwriter.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
So this, when you wrote this,
मुझे कोई वाइन ऑफर कर देगा?
Oh, I think you need a glass now.
I could do.
but
I
I
could
think
do
अभी
with
बहुत
it.
करना है.
Let me
White
just
or
check
red?
if this.
White
I
or
think
red?
for me red. White गले को ज़रा ज़्यादा लगता है. Let's see if I want to
So
just.
while the wine is coming,
Which film? 2 पैसे की धूप. It was a story told to me by my gay friend. कि एक बार उसने he had shared space with a call girl who had a child. तो मुझे वो subject. You are to purchase the book.
I will purchase. I know that. Where can I leave the money here?
For Ajay, right?
Yes.
Oh,
they give it to me. 900.
no, I've got it on a. These are all on a
Discount.
writer's discount. हाँ, 6. हाँ. 6 something है ना? कुछ है. हाँ, 650 ले लो. हाँ, 700 ले लो. हाँ, 700 ले लो.
Acha, so it was not something you wanted to.
I wanted to tell. No. It was उनकी तरफ से तो 3 लाइन में स्टोरी आई थी. मैंने डेवलप किया. I put a lot of myself into that. You can see me in the film.
Yeah, just for
You can see my little touches everywhere. Yeah.
आपको लेकिन एक ही मिनट, एक ही सेकंड के लिए.
नहीं. See me means you can see my mind.
No, that of course,
Yeah.
but see you
हाँ,
also.
हाँ, वो तो.
You want to deliver a thank you address?
Acha.
I think it's in order, isn't it?
Yes. So,
Haji,
with like a soft.
Shruti is calling us all to attention, please.
Yes. So I just, I think she's opened a Pandora's box through the book. So many experiences which we couldn't even imagine of our own times and just before many of us, and which have shaped, the life of India, the history of India, and Deepti's life through all that. I think it's going to be a fascinating journey, this book, even for us and our own lives, I think. So I think everyone must get a copy of this book. We have some more copies as well, if anybody wants. Sure.
Everyone tells me, आपकी किताब पढ़ते हैं तो हमारा पूरा बचपन हम रीलिव कर रहे हैं. Yeah.
So I was meant to thank, but I started talking about the journey. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
for being
Thank you,
here.
Shruti. Thank you.
Thank
You
you
made this
for,
lovely
giving
evening.
us this experience. Thank you for being a part of us right through the festival and
Thanks.
just being
I've loved it. Yeah, every
being
moment.
who you are.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Raj.
Just Raj.
He's my cousin.
हाँ.
Vedika, just get more copies.
I'm just so jealous. I'm struggling with mine. You've written yours.
I'm also struggling with mine.
Really? Yeah, good. तो लिखना है ना? हाँ, लिखना है.
I gave myself this year as a deadline. So.
अच्छा.
I'll collect the money.
Yeah, how much?
NIL.
Right. No NIELs, no NEELs. Thank you, Deepti. That was lovely.
Good.
अब इसका मुआवजा
Spell it for me.
इसका मुआवजा भी तो देंगे.
PWNA.
How much is it?
Poonam. PWNA.
डबल ओ है ना? हाँ, तो पूनम तो डबल ओ ही होता है.
Yeah, she's getting a copy.
हो गया.
You're also getting changed. Thank you.
Here, my dear.
Thank you.
I don't.